This
group of it.
conference will now be
Oops,
recorded.
I'm sorry, Steve. I just was opening the recording.
It's all right, no problem. Yeah, I'm happy to cover a few of those things. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, so do you have some information on like the summit and those kinds of things prepared, or you want me to kind of go through those? They're kind of up here as the the global.
I would just say that the call for papers is closing soon, so please, even if you do not have a detailed abstract now, just putting in a few lines of what you would like to present would allow you to have a placeholder and then go back and edit it to increase the depth of that abstract later. But that's pretty important. Also, we will be having our OCP Experience Center, which is different than the one that I typically work with, but the OCP Experience Center at Summit that will be being curated by Bijan. I've pinged Bijan now to see if he can join. If he can't, there'll be more information coming about that a little bit later. But that's my recommendation, is for those of you that think you may even have a topic in the future, to please enter in at least a placeholder for now.
Okay. Is there I guess Lucas, I think have you presented any of the abstracts yet? Have those been entered? I think you were planning on that as the only person I see that I know had a presentation. But okay. Yeah. Either we've put in a couple of abstracts I know are coming. And I think I've heard of at least 4. So I'll get with John after the call and make sure that we can get those people, see what their status are. And I noticed John did join. John, thank you.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I got pulled away, but I'll let you keep driving.
No worries. So actually, we just got started. We gave them 5. We started about 5 after. So I'll let you go ahead and take over if you want. I know you had for your whatever you had for administrative and stuff. And if you, I'll just keep the slides up if you want as well. Just let me know if you need to change them.
Okay, yeah. I guess we don't have anybody from my tech, so I wasn't sure if they were going to be ready today to present or not. But I've had some email challenges with them that was bouncing. So, but I guess we'll try to move them then to next month.
Oh, hey John, were you on when
Yeah.
I had the little conversation with Steve about the marketplace slides that he has? So I think
No.
I think that Steve said that he would be able to give us a new section on some of the his impressions of the analytics from the marketplace.
Oh, okay. Do we want to do that today?
Yeah, I just need about 5 to 8 minutes max.
Okay. And then I think Bijan, a couple of meetings ago, he kind of suggested perhaps we could talk a little bit about this telephonic article about the GSMA Open Gateway. Did people have a chance to look at that at all? Yeah, so the idea with it was to kind of align with what's going on with this camera working group that's been kind of put together to drive this whole concept of open APIs into the network. And so they had proposed, I think, basically 8 API functions. Let me see if I can pull up my material here.
So, hey, John, I'll stop
Yeah.
sharing then, and you can pick it up, okay?
Yeah, give me a minute. I gotta jump to that material. If I can share. Can y'all see my screen?
Not yet. I think it's coming up. There it
Yep.
goes.
Okay. So what they had proposed is basically a contribution to this camera group here into this repository. So I believe it's a set of 8 APIs, and so these are the APIs. So there's a SIM swap API, a quality on demand API, a device status API, a number verification API, a simple edge discovery API, one-time password SMS, and carrier billing checkout, and device location. And so really kind of what the goal is of this camera group is to provide really higher level abstractions to hide kind of the complexity of the network, but at the same time kind of providing useful functionality to over the top applications that would be kind of built. And so if you look at some of these, um, there could be edge type impacts to functionality, that you'd want to be able to deploy, um, you know, into the network. So like if we look at this, and like kind of a good example of this is this quality on demand one. Um, so this is looking at um, being able to kind of manage the latency, um, at the network level. And so, kind of when I looked at this, you could kind of think of this as, perhaps this could be related to, say network slicing or something that you would want to do closer at the edge, um, to kind of manage quality of service type of things. Now, kind of what makes this interesting is that, you can't really say it's an SLA because, when we're talking wireless, you can't really do a guaranteed SLA because you're always at the mercy of, if you have interference or whatnot. And then, at the same time, you have kind of limited shared bandwidth. And, so kind of when you look at these things, you would think that yes, you could do this, if you have limited applications, but, I always like to think about worst case scenarios. And so, what if you had, you know, some event going on and for whatever reason you had maybe thousands of things requesting, better quality of service. Well, you know, that's where this would kind of fall apart. And so, um, there'd be some practical limitations to this, I would say. Um, I don't know what are kind of the thoughts there, um, for you all. Do you see these things as kind of, you know edge related in this case, or things that you would implement kind of, closer to the edge and being able to kind of satisfy them? Because, if you look at the way these are done, they don't really kind of specify an implementation, right? They're really just an API, and how it's actually realized could be kind of, is sort of left up to the implementation. So just kind of throw this out to the group. What all is everybody's thoughts here around just this kind of idea and its applicability to the edge?
Sean, it's Andy. Under camera project, there's also seems to be an Edge Cloud API being set up, but it does say should be restricted to 4G and 5G, at least in early stages. So I put the
Hmm.
link in the chat.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. But is this something that the group would be interested in kind of digging deeper into? I know kind of Bijan was throwing this out there, just kind of wanted to, um, I think, spur some discussion around this concept.
My kind of first thought is it fits in with what Ildiko was talking about with Starling X as well. So the Edge Cloud API, let's see what other projects it could be compatible with, and
Okay.
not have multiple parallel projects trying to achieve the same things. I know we often end up with that anyway, but
Yeah,
I
and
think that
is there a space here where that we could carve something out, right? So if you look at this, the implementation of it, it's I think kind of open to the way that you would implement them. Um, and like you said, there's several groups all trying to do the same thing or similar things, and what role could we possibly have there or would want to have there, um, if at all? And so
possibly knocking heads together.
yeah. I mean, I think kind of from this group, we could kind of bring maybe a lot of um, intellectual capital around, kind of our thoughts around kind of the hardware and things like that. Um, especially when you look at this, if you have limited resources and things, how that could possibly play into this. Um, because like if we talk, kind of
Yeah,
like the
look,
discussion we were having before, like if you're doing stuff with the GPU, it's like, okay, yeah, I can maybe put a couple of cards in here. I can't, or have to really build this out. Um, so maybe that there's some arbitration things that also need to be thought about here that could be wrapped around this quality of demand idea, right? Like, so if you do have limited resources and you're kind of offering this up as an API, you need some way to throttle it or control some knowledge of what capability and capacity you have at the edge sites, for example. Any thoughts around that?
just looking at what's in the Edge Cloud description, they're talking about being able to do things like deploy applications to reserved instances. So there's definitely some scope for things like an application which needs a GPU needs to be sent to the right boxes, and all those kind of things, which we could probably help with or provide guidance on hardware
Yeah.
management to make sure that, because not every box is going to be the same.
So is what you're talking about? Is this off of a different? Is this something you can share on the share here about what you're looking at?
If you open the link that's in the chat in this meeting,
Okay. Let me see. Sorry, let me stop my share and get back to the meeting.
Yeah,
There.
it would seem that this is an API for an application, right? But that says nothing about the northbound, southbound kind of stuff that an SDN controller would require to make this happen across multiple networks. So
no, a quick scan through it, it's all pretty high level.
Yeah, I think they basically have some thoughts, right? But it kind of doesn't have any kind of meat. Is this what this is what you're talking about, correct? What I'm showing?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, this looks maybe even more rudimentary than. Yeah, so it's very rudimentary.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. It's not my first cloud, but on the other hand,
Yeah. So yeah, okay, so kind of what you're suggesting then is kind of we could kind of maybe perhaps contribute some things around what we this resource.
things like resource planning, edge discovery, particularly for
Yeah,
things like add-in cards, storage, that kind of stuff.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
maybe just boost this. I mean, in the case of this API, maybe boost it a bit if we can. On the
yeah,
things like the QoS API, it's difficult to see where they're going to go with it. That isn't just like 5G and mobile networks,
yeah. I mean, yeah,
because there's
this
already
is
there's a load of the QoS stuff for like backbone and optical networks. TIP are doing a lot of stuff, aren't they? So
yeah. It's just
is
kind of
it
funny
is it risks
because
duplicate? Yeah.
this is sort of like the third rodeo I think that I've been involved with the telco industry around this kind of concept. Um, my first exposure to it was really like this intelligent network things, and then the idea there was to kind of separate out the call control logic from the actual hardware platforms, host it in kind of a centralized service execution location. Then the second go around was this concept they called parlay, and the idea of parlay was to wrap APIs on top of things like send an SMS message and set up a call between two endpoints and these kinds of things. And it's kind of the same kind of model where you would define the API, but the implementation was kind of left up as an exercise to the reader as to like how you'd actually realize that. Um, and since probably most of you have never heard of parlay, you can kind of guess that it didn't really take off in the industry. So this is kind of maybe the third go around at the rodeo. Um, so how do we kind of maybe take some lessons learned from the previous times this was attempted?
There's an even older one than that, John. If you look at GSM, this is more European than global, but the railway industry ended up developing its own version of GSM because there was no QoS in the original spec.
Right. Yep, I
And
remember
there
that.
were
Yep.
features that we need, and we ended up having to build our own network design. So
Yep. Yep, I
it's an
remember that.
insane way to do things, but yeah,
But
this is a lot of APIs which will probably become layers on top of other stuff from just a first look at it.
yep.
Because I don't think there's anything certainly the Edge Cloud thing that you've got on the screen now. I don't think there's anything there that can't be done by solutions that already exist. It's just those solutions all come from different places.
Right. Right. And so maybe this is
So
just kind of arbitration.
maybe this is an overlay rather than.
Yep. Interesting.
Sorry, I seem to be monopolising this side of the conversation. I'll be quiet for a bit.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, let's have an interactive dialogue, for sure. I mean, um, but yeah, I worked on the original GSM as well, and I remember the railroad spec that kind of developed in parallel. And
The
you
thing
know,
that gets me is back on the other where that some of the API calls were about um, some of the edge topics that aren't telco related, like 5G, 4G, GSM, but had to do more with some edge, IoT kind of things. And I think they talked about too some of the industrial applications, which is a
If
little different. I mean, I'm not sure how exactly this fits in terms of
if you
the
click the if
OCP
who's is it,
necessarily.
if that's your screen still, John, if you click the sub
yeah,
projects menu item, you'll see the list of other things.
Yes. those are some of the topics that we've not really covered, because we're, the edge was originally about the base of a tower and those things. And we've kind of now started to say, hey, should we look? And to me, these are kind of use cases that we need to make sure that we have appropriate OCP gear that can meet these needs. Is there something unique here that we need to address or to get more information on? I mean, APIs, there's lots of those around, right?
Yep.
Is what I'm saying. Is there anything unique about our, widening of the scope, if you will, of the edge and what we're considering the edge?
Well, like
I have,
if you look at this list, right? This list is basically that same list that I had, right? Because I was talking about
Yeah.
this quality on demand and device status and some other things, right? But now it looks like this has kind of been expanded. Um, because there was no edge cloud in that list I originally was showing you. So it looks like um, they kind of this one looks a little more fleshed out, right? Um, but this edge cloud looks totally new because it doesn't show up on that original list that I had.
it it might not be GSMA. It might just be the camera project doing it themselves.
Yep. Oh, that could be two.
The
You're
other thing
right.
Well,
I've just had
yeah,
a
this
quick
might
look
be.
at the device ID, and it's definitely looking at handsets rather than servers.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought this one was the unique one when we went through the original ones. It's still kind of in format of telco, but I'm not sure what our group, is this just another use case that we need to be, aware of and concerned about?
Well, see, this is interesting. This is interesting, right? Because if you think about, when we were talking about that GPU case, the GPU scenario several meetings ago, one of these questions would be, if you want to talk about like, okay, what would you do there? Okay, maybe some kind of, augmented reality or, extended reality, some kind of XR application. Today, most of those things are Windows-based graphical applications, right? And typically you would either run these things, maybe on a powerful home gaming kind of setup, or you could stream them from the cloud. Um, so there's kind of those models. But if you start talking about the edge, now you have this problem of how do I get that software deployed to the edge, right? So it's kind of interesting to see here. They're talking about provide and manage application images, right? And so that would be, how would I get this XR application deployed to the edge? So you would need to have some type of API to sort of onboard that application, and then figure out how would you deploy, where would you deploy it, and how would you deploy it. Um, and then that would go along with, okay, I do have these GPU resources now. What's interesting is, if you look at say NVIDIA GPUs, for example, there's different cards that you'd use for say AI/ML than for say graphics. And so, just because you have a GPU doesn't necessarily mean that you can just run any kind of workload on it. You would have to, if you have an AI/ML type application, match it up with, the equivalent AI/ML GPU card versus, if I'm doing something with XR, then I need maybe a different family that's optimized for, graphics rendering and these types of things.
Plus, plus, if you stick an NVIDIA GPU in your data center to do AI, you're going to get a phone call from the lawyers.
Yep. All right. Well, yeah, this is something to think
I think
about.
I think
Steve,
it's something to think about and maybe read in a bit more detail. I'd also um, I'll ping the email, sorry, the URL over to Ildeco as well at Starling X, see if they've heard of it. because a lot of the things that are in this Edge Cloud API, they would probably be able to do. They might just need a compatibility layer.
Yeah, and I know
So,
I
but
forget who
it's
it was
still
on the.
really high level. So let's think about it.
So yeah, maybe this would be good to kind of to revisit with the Starlink X discussion, because yeah, that would kind of dovetail nicely. Steve, are you ready to kind of talk about kind of the marketing part of this? Are you set up to do that?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Give
Okay,
me 2 seconds here.
let me stop my sharing here.
All right. I just need permission to present. If you'll make me presenter.
Uh, all right, you should be presenter.
Perfect. Okay, what I've been sharing with the other projects, which I want to do on a quarterly basis for yourself here. Minimize that. Is share a bit about the OCP marketplace. So we redesigned this in October. Prior to that, it was really product centric. So we're moving more towards solution centric and vertical centric. The telecom and edge being the first vertical that we are profiling. Moving this marketplace was a pretty heavy lift on our side on the back end of things. Down below, you will see all the logos that are associated with the OCP marketplace. 2 on the left have to deal with the member's status, whether or not they are an authorized or certified or recognized OCP reseller. And the other 4, accepted, inspired, ready, and experience center, denote the actual solution or the product or the facility. So we now have 4 different sections. The marketplace itself, through Q1, averaging around 9% of the overall views going to the marketplace. And what's interesting about this is that it is more than the contributions database. So those people that are thinking about making a contribution, it's always great to find a way to go that last mile, whether it be through yourself directly and become part of that program, or work through one of our current members who are part of the program and move the product through a partner channel. The marketplace views themselves, in the upper left-hand side, you will see a table, 12,000 views for products. That's 60% of the total views still on the products page. Very happy with the first quarter for telecom and edge and integrated solutions. And facilities and services are relatively new. So facilities and services include data center, the OCP Ready program, our OCP Experience Center program, and any training or ecosystem services such as sustainability services, carbon analysis, energy efficiency studies, etc. We now have over 200 listings on the marketplace, which is a great milestone. We have over 40 of our members are part of this program. The countries on the right-hand side, you will see that list does not change that much. A few of the countries move in and out at the bottom, but the top 5 or 6 remain relatively constant. We have no localization in China and Russia. None of our content is localized, and yet they still remain in the top 5 of overall views. The top 20 viewed on the marketplace, the WeWin Yosemite version 3 server is the latest for the OpenRack SKU, but you will see down through this list, if you follow the legend between, say, the blue, the orange, and the green, these are overlapping somewhat. So if I'm, say, have a disaggregated cell site gateway, that product will show in the products tab, and it will also show in the telecom and edge tab. So it'll have a dual entry. So if I totaled up all these numbers, it would be even higher for some of these products. But the individual products being viewed, 60+% again on the product side, but I would say at least 30% of these, if not higher, have to deal with the edge and telecom. So it's a pretty outstanding initial effort to show where the community, or at least the people that are viewing the marketplace, are most interested. This includes Nokia's open edge chassis toward the bottom, but also the blueprints are much higher than what I thought. So the ONF 5G LTE, which is about 7 or 8 down the list, is a blueprint that we did with ONF. Nokia's open edge front haul gateway, which is a relatively new contribution, again, top 20. And then toward the bottom, you will see some Sonic as well as some TIP blueprints. So overall, Edge and Telecom are showing quite well in this new design, and I think that we'll hopefully see even more traction moving forward. But the Telecom and Edge section specifically is the only section of the marketplace where we have both solutions. That includes full rack, partial rack blueprints, and individual products, network switch or an open edge server. So it is a unique section of the website. And again, if I totaled up these specific numbers on different areas of the way that it overlaps, it would be even higher, but really good initial showing. We have some OCP experience centers around the world, which hopefully we'll have more. We have Rapid Space that has one in Lille, France, which is a 5G lab that people can do some testing. Stortus has an open networking lab in Germany, which is doing quite a bit of work for Edge and Telecom. And then, of course, another new one in North America. This is just an example of Avis Networks in California doing some Sonic work. But overall, we have over a dozen of these OCP experience centers, and they can be as simple as a lab or as elaborate as an executive briefing center where I can see OCP type of designs. What's going well? So the feedback on the new UI and layout, I'd mentioned the numbers prior and the initial views that I'm pleased with. Immersion and AI is certainly showing very well. We have very few SKUs for immersion and AI. So as that continues to grow, I would imagine that section would grow, because if I look at the filter and the behavior of what someone's looking at on the website for contributions and then translating that in the marketplace, we need more immersion and AI type of capabilities showing up on the marketplace. And overall services still new. For those of you on the call that may be interested, I did a session last Global Summit on how to go to market, which covers not only the marketplace, but other ways that we help our channel partners get the most value out of OCP. And if you're interested in the program itself, it's a flat $4,000 fee, regardless of your membership tier and regardless of the number of products or SKUs that you want to list on the marketplace. So it's a pretty good value, and it just requires a couple of agreements and some pictures and descriptions. Happy to go through more in detail. Just drop me a note, and that is it. Any questions? John, back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Let me go back to the agenda here. I think we pretty much have hit everything on the agenda. I know we wanted to do a Starling X discussion, and then we also need to kind of replan this discussion as well. So,
John, sorry, it's Andy again. I
Yeah.
mentioned Starling X, I think, just before you joined us. They've actually got an event on this week, so Ildeco's in Vancouver for that. The suggestion, we've been in contact by email, and the suggestion is maybe we use the September Telco Edge call. So
okay.
everyone's back so people are back after the summer, and she and I don't have to coordinate vacation times and things.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Andy, for sure.
It's especially if it's going to interact with other things like the camera stuff we've just been talking about. Then let's try and get as many people as we can.
Yeah. So okay.
And
So your suggestion is
I think
that
maybe we can suggest. Let's discuss it near the time, but maybe we can put something on the Starling X mailing list as well to see if anyone from that side wants to join the call in September.
Okay. So your suggestion is we cover Starling X in September then.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds fantastic.
John, I've got two other things here I forgot to mention, not about the marketplace, but in general. You quickly share, and then I'll let hand it back to you. This event is happening in September. This is for Open UK. This will be in Edinburgh. We are co-sponsoring this event. Open UK is an open source organization that focuses on open source software, open hardware, and open data. And they're doing some pretty amazing things. They have a great keynote set up for policy strategy and governance from the UN. And they're working on things such as an EV charging blueprint for the UK as well. So if you're in Edinburgh or you find yourself in the UK in September, that's a great option. The other two items, if you look at our OCP upcoming events page, is OCP Technology Day, July 4th in Seoul. We will be there. A couple of us will be traveling to Seoul for that. We should be expecting a really good crowd at the COEX, co-hosted by Samsung. And then also China Day, Beijing, August 10th. So if you have your local teammates in that area, that event is usually well attended by well over 1,000 people or so in Beijing. And it's our annual event, OCP China Day. So if you're interested in speaking, sponsoring, or attending, let me know. Otherwise, all the info is on the events page.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. And so then also to future topics will be Starling X in September, and then I think John Paul Smets from Rapid Space also wanted to get some time. So
Yeah, John, I can help chase JP and find out when he would like to do that.
Okay, yeah, if you could do that, and I will. I think I've got the emails working with the MyTech guys now. I will see if I can get them lined up then for next month. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to share?
Hey, Bijan, I noticed you joined. I didn't notice when. I'm sorry about that. But did you have anything you'd like to say about the Open Gateway API, like how you see that fitting in, or any of that following our discussion on that? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but we did have you as a topic for that. You know, pegged you as a topic. So I want to give you the opportunity.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it other than, I think Linux Foundation is, they're probably a good, partner to work with. So if there's something that we need to do to get them to refine what they have, they'll work with us, and we can, we have an agreement where we'll, we can start things in our project and they'll implement them there. But I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say unless there's some specific questions about it or something.
Was there something like specific that you were thinking? Because there's that set of APIs, and when I kind of looked at it, you kind of imagining like where you could play to help kind of flesh some of the implementation out. For some of those things. But when I looked at it, it looks like this edge part is relatively new because it wasn't in the GSMA material specifically, but it is in the camera material, as Andy was pointing out.
Yeah, so it is an evolving area. LF Edge is kind of redefining. They I think they set up a LF connectivity, or LF networking, and then LF Edge, and now they're all kind of dividing up some of the existing work and re-looking at some of that stuff. So that's why there's some changes. But no, my only, like I said, my only thoughts on that were it's an interesting opportunity, like if we want to, work with them to leverage it on our platforms. Maybe there's some acceleration capabilities that we could add in, like, for example, OAI, for example, or no, SAI, sorry, for example, is we have a switching, kind of project, right? And that switching project, one thing they needed was a kind of interface between, kind of higher levels of software and the hardware. So the SAI is just that, right? It's a kind of an abstraction layer, but an enabler. And so there might be some opportunities for us to look at things like that. If we have anything that's unique in our architecture that we want to bring out, and maybe this is not so relevant today, but maybe it becomes more relevant as we look at maybe adding accelerators and other things down the pipeline. So it's just a general opportunity. There's nothing specific there that I think you should act on. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's kind of how I kind of read your thoughts as well, right? Just kind of like take a look at these things, see how we could possibly um, add some value to them, right? And I think what makes our edge. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's like there's so many. This is a big surface area, right? So there's mobile edge, of course, but there's also edge applications, which is kind of like a whole other area. So yeah, it's a big surface area. So the idea is look for maybe look for it the other way. Look for like where are opportunities for us to enhance some of what they do or optimize it somehow.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, what we do.
Yeah, because I think the big thing with Edge that's different is that there's these resource constraints that you have. With the idea being for Edge that we want to locate things close. And so the minute you start trying to select an area, you can't maybe always guarantee that you have unlimited resources and that kind of thing. And so there's things that you would need to expose out around, what are the capabilities of this site? What does it have? How much of it does it have? And how does that kind of fit into some of these higher level abstracted APIs and things?
Yeah, so strategically, if you look at AI, right, AI ML and OCP, we build infrastructure, we build platforms for it, but it is like the thing now, right? Everyone's scrambling around to facilitate it, to work with it, to deploy, develop with it. And in my mind, this is like a major opportunity for the edge because various reasons like latency, privacy, or data sovereignty, however you want to look at it. And
Yep.
This becomes real, right? I mean, it's all been academic to this point. Like, yeah, it would be nice to have an edge compute and you can offload. Okay, that's cool, that's a case for it, or maybe, but it was all academic. But now we're looking at something very tangible, right? It's like, all right, I want to run an AI model for image recognition. What are all the things that I need to do for that? Well, it turns out just having the compute power is one aspect, right? So it's a bigger picture of things that we need to bring to the table.
Yep. Yeah. If you look at AI and implementing it, it has a fairly substantially large footprint to run, right? And one of the things is these data models, or the knowledge base, basically of you train the AI, it generates this model. Okay, you have to kind of get this model. How do you get this model into the edge? Do you use the edge to train the model and then kind of reintegrate the model with other edge sites that are also learning things? It I think it opens up some interesting um, capabilities, but then also, constraints being that, it only has awareness of what it would get or see from its edge deployment, where, you'd start to want to be able to maybe perhaps link these things together, or, how do you move this knowledge base around? How do you
Well,
fit this all into these limited resources that you would maybe have at these edge sites, right? So that you'd have to maybe segment the models.
I agree with you. If you look at the big picture, you know, energy consumption is skyrocketing for AI/ML. You know, we need co-processors, or we need GPUs, and we need a massive amount of memory, and this is the tip of the iceberg, right? So let's say you build a model. Let's say I have an open edge server. I have a facial recognition service running for, when a truck pulls up, open my, my gate back there so they can drop off a delivery. Well, the way AI/ML works, like you pointed out, is, it's model driven, and so you have this training data and you train it, and that's a large thing. And in this case, it may not make sense to train it at the edge, right? You could train it centrally and bring it a pre-trained model. But nonetheless, that becomes like, that represents different things to different people, right? So now this model, it could be a honeypot for security, for hackers, right? It could be used to mislead in case you wanted to break into the system somehow. You know, there's just so much surface area there, right? So we
Right.
have to kind of consider all the things. But I think another thing that's driving the bus here is energy consumption. Energy consumption of this AI/ML is off the chain, because if you factor in what it took to train the model and then what it takes to run it, it's an enormous amount of energy. So I think, there's a long way we can go from a platform standpoint to kind of help that that equation and make it make more sense, because I'm a little fearful that all this deployment of AI everywhere will drive up energy consumption network wide and cause unintended side effects.
Yep. Well, I mean, look what crypto did, right? And it's sort of the same kind of thing.
So
Well, I
to
know that
put that in OCP terms,
Simulian, yeah, I know Simulian, those guys presented the liquid cooling for open edge, I guess the next generation. And I was thinking, okay, well, that's general CPU cooling. Okay, what if we added a GPU? What if we added,
so
it's a skyrocketing thing.
in OCP terms, for those who've been around a long time, right? If you'll go back to the first OCP presentations, it was all about getting rid of chillers, how we're going to save money by having air cool, how we're going to air cool. And now to see it come around because of AI and the power requirements there, we now have top level project on cooling, where before that was the big joke. That's how we're going to save so much money with OCP. You don't need all that cooling infrastructure. So to your point, we're now a part of that as well, but no one really talks about that story.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of things that we can go do, and I'm just trying to seed the thinking a little bit, and kind of help
Hey,
provide perspective.
hey, Lucas, is your voice working now, or is it not? Could you try it for a second? I wanted to ask you about what he just addressed with accelerators in Open Edge, and like, is there any kind of information study wise that you might have on that? I think that would be a good topic to present into one of our community calls. Okay. I see.
Hey, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just, go ahead, Mike. That's fine. Lucas,
Oh, I
I
was
don't
just going
think
to give
his
from
voice is
our
working.
perspective, when we're doing cold plate liquid cooling,
Absolutely.
if we add something like a GPU to it, it's just simply adding another cold plate to that GPU and then running the tubing such that it also services that that PCIe card.
Which is fine in the data center, but when you're talking about the edge, where the base is constrained, and maybe there's a whole other set of things that we need to go build, some sort of modularity into these designs or something, some
But for
guidelines.
something like Open Edge, you still, I mean, regardless of if you add another, if you remove the heat sink from the GPU and you put a cold plate on top of that, you're still just have one inlet and one outlet for for that cooling liquid, right? So the solution is completely contained within the chassis.
Hey, Mike, it's Andy. Just to pick up on that, you know what our use cases are. There's
Oh, yeah.
no way we'll get approval for liquid cooling at the edge. It just is not going to happen.
Really?
Yeah, it's too big a risk because we have temperature ranges. Like we hit -30 in the winter and we could hit +30 in the summer.
So, Andy,
Yeah,
No one's
that
no
really
one's going to want to
depends
risk equipment.
on the chemistry
It's
of the
about
fluid.
it's about perception, not reality.
Yeah, I mean, when I say liquid, I don't necessarily mean water.
No, I know,
it can
I
be
know.
a mixture of a
That's
glycol and a water-based solution,
that's
and there are a
that's
lot of
what
different
that's why I said
formulas.
it's about perception, not reality.
so
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
hey,
I didn't
Andy,
catch that.
I would appreciate if you would take a look at some of the cooling studies that we've done on Open Edge to ensure that we're actually doing this in a way that allows you to continue to have your uh, desire to have no cooling, and that we continue to keep the Open Edge expanding, and taking both use cases into account.
So
Because the
so
last thing we want to do is to kill it.
Craig and Mike, you both know our use cases. Bijan, I don't think we've spoken before. I'm working in a railway project, so we'll have assets that are out in the middle of nowhere in the field, completely unmanned. No one can get there to fix them. But we'll also have assets that are in a station. So what we could do is put, if we need massive AI with cooling infrastructure, that could go into a station, even if it's a couple of open edge servers. We don't need to deploy those all the way out in the field. So where that's potentially relevant for camera and the edge cloud APIs is hardware inventory. Which box is where? What are the capabilities of that box? Which box has got what accelerator? Maybe the majority of the training is done in a core data center, but some of the training is done in the field. But it's controlled locations, a small number of protected spaces. And then I actually think this also fits in with what we talked about. Was it last time or the time before, the AWS gateway that they're looking for their stores? That's definitely resource constrained.
Yep.
So pushing those models out to that kind of box, that's something that we could potentially get involved with. What's our view on best practice for that kind of stuff
Well,
from
and
a
that's
telco
also
point of view
just
and a cloud point of view and industrials?
Yeah, just a word on that. AWS is really kind of worried about that, and so they've been trying to kind of divide up the world, just exactly what we've been talking about for the past 10 minutes, and that's how do they, offload the edge box with some of the heavy lifting, so they don't need exotic cooling in a retail location, for example.
Oh, yeah, so you don't have a large pile of equipment with "Steal Me" written on the front.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and that was one of the interesting things too with these XR applications, and what's interesting is that it's all about the turnaround latency, because you're going to do things with head-mounted displays that have to be able to stream your movements up to the application that then has to sort of render and respond to your movements. And if there's too much latency, it makes people ill, right? Because your balance all gets thrown off. And so, as you look at kind of some of these industrial use cases that they want to do this like augmented maintenance and management, where people would be wearing these head-mounted displays that would be guiding them through activities. It's going to be critical that you maintain that really low turnaround latency, so that so people aren't getting sick from your vision lagging behind your movements.
Yeah,
But
big driver.
so that's really one of these things that needs to be pushed out to the edge. And I think people are seeing now just kind of streaming things from the cloud isn't working as well as people thought it would, because there is too much latency.
Yeah. I just a side note, in a startup, I built a prototype kind of AR system using Microsoft's HoloLens.
Right.
And I did this for a network operator, and the demo was that the operations personnel could, using this HoloLens, that quickly identifies whatever they're looking at. Like, this is the primary processor that's active, this is the standby, this is broken, this is running, this kind of thing. And yeah, it was a problem. The latency was huge. So we did have to move the servers so close to the edge to make it even at a demo level.
Yes,
So
exactly. Interesting.
And that wasn't even live.
Absolute
It was just data.
absolute worst case for us is you have to put a server in the back of a maintenance truck.
Yeah.
And it's not impossible. I mean, there are servers. There are like maintenance trains out there that are basically small data centers. And BNSF has got one that they actually even call data center on rail. So.
Yeah, I worked with BNSF with the P2C, the positive train control.
PTC, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Bijan, I just put a YouTube into the chat for your benefit. Well, and everybody, obviously, but especially, I thought you'd get a kick out of it. This is all on Open Edge, by the way. You might recognize the HoloLens.
I will definitely watch this video. It looks pretty cool. Yeah, that's but that video is what I did for a network operator. It's been a long time now. It's 2023 now, so 8 years ago. Didn't have an open edge server back then. Would have helped.
I'm sorry, Bijan, I was talking on mute. We presented this at an experience center at the OCP Summit.
Yeah, you guys should do it again.
Well, that's the thing. We already presented that years ago. Why would we want to come back and present these old things that we've already done?
Well, Apple made what's old, what's new, right? So
that's a good point.
Isn't that the theme of the IT sector? What goes around comes around.
Yep.
Right. And we had the same with handsets that you could point at pictures, and then that would launch a video or other kind of, yeah. But we'll try to do an experience center this year as well. I think we have a good chance for it.
Sounds good, guys. Is there anybody else anything they want to share? Let's see, we're at the top of our hour.
Well, if you guys need anything, just reach out. I'm hoping you guys could think of something cool to bring to the Experience Center this year. I think we're gonna get a lot of eyeballs, and it's a good opportunity to kind of drive the discussion. So.
Sounds good. All right, everyone. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll close it for this month, and we'll catch you all next.
All right, thank you.
I guess it's good morning, good afternoon to you guys based on your time zones. It's good evening for me. See you later.
Yeah,
Bye.
absolutely. Have a great evening.
All right,
Bye-bye
talk to you all
now.
later.
Yes, bye.
Bye-bye.
Good pint for me.